This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Franny's Pharmacy.
Now more than ever, it's important that our society focuses more on our mental and physical health. At Franny's Pharmacy, the team is committed to their community's need of being happy, healthy, and stress-free. Come learn how Franny's Pharmacy can assist you in a clean, professional environment with their expert bud tenders that are excited to educate you about the benefits of their lab-tested, DEA-certified CBD products. Franny's Pharmacy also offers wholesale and franchise opportunities. Visit their website at frannysPharmacy.com, and that's pharmacy with an F, and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Again, that's Franny's Pharmacy with an F.com and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Franny's Pharmacy, putting the farm back into pharmacy.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Endocanna Health.
Hey cannabis consumers, have you ever consumed a cannabis product thinking it'll make you feel a certain way, but then it doesn't? Don't you wish you had a clear understanding of your own DNA so that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products interact best with your system? Well, now you can with EndoDNA. EndoDNA is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with a specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that best aligns with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the knowledge and power and capability to purchase products that best align with your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA Collection Kit and Endo Decoded Report at endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with EndoDNA. Eben, what is going on?
Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's nice to have you on the podcast. Looking forward to talking with you today.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here and definitely excited to talk about all things cannabis.
All things cannabis, all things hemp, and specifically in the state of Maine, which, we haven't really covered, I guess, exclusively yet. So before we dive into Maine and the current state of, cannabis, medicinal cannabis, and hemp, let's talk about your background, Eben. So I can see here that you're the CEO of Casco Bay Hemp and 1780. But, that didn't happen overnight, obviously. So walk us through your journey and what brought you to this industry.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maine and left as soon as I possibly could, like, everybody else does in their youth. I lived all over the place and found my way back here about 6 years ago now. Yeah, crazy how time flies. My education was more towards business and politics and economics. And I found myself in the cannabis industry actually through my father, which is kind of interesting since he spent my childhood stealing my bowls and pipes and and hiding things. So we were actually working on his barn, residing his farm, and he said, "Hey, I was thinking about growing weed," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" That totally took me. We laughed about it. But as we're working, we started talking about it more and more, and he was actually really interested in it. And
what sparked the interest? I mean, was there legislation that had passed at that time? I mean, what caught his interest?
Yeah, really that. Maine was we passed medicinal in 1999, which is quite a long time ago. So after, so many years, it just kind of started to normalize, and then you would see the market and start to, see things on media, hear about it from friends. and he was retired, and we had the space to do it. So it was like he just kind of took an interest to it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. I mean, this sounds pretty good. And then we just kept working it over, and then all of a sudden we were licensed caregivers in the state, which that's the term for cultivators at that time. You could grow basically for 5 patients and yourself, and you could grow up to 6 plants. So 30 plants in total is what you could have flowering. But I'll back up a little bit. So we got into that. That was 2015 or 16, right around there. And around 2018, I'm 2 years in now. I'm learning a lot more about cannabis. You know what a cannabinoid is. There's many others outside of THC, and then all of a sudden you're hearing about CBD, and I'm like, okay, well this is interesting. And then the market was obviously much bigger than being in a licensed state where, obviously can only sell to Mainers. And then learning about the benefits really, and talking to a lot of people, a lot, especially in his age group, had tried, smoked in college like 40 years ago or whatever, and really were afraid of it. And especially hearing horror stories about, people eating a brownie that was not titrated properly or not even dosed at all, and hiding under a blanket out of fear for like 6 hours. So they were like, that whole age group was really, they're like, I'm not even going to mess with that. So like the fact that hemp has the same benefits as, high THC cannabis without the psychoactive nature, was really interesting to me, and obviously opening up that market for other people. So I started Casco Bay Hemp with a partner. And really what we did in the beginning was we basically brought clients together with another manufacturing partner, and we would do all the branding and labeling, packaging, and then kind of ship it out. So we were a bit of a middleman at that point. And since then, we've grown into doing all of our manufacturing, or the majority of it. And we've brought a scientist in. So we do research and development now, which is amazing. It's really opened up the possibilities of what we can do as far as like finished packaged goods go. And then it's also given us the ability to offer our clients who always have great ideas. They're like, I want to add CBD to this. And we're like, great. Okay, well, first it takes a formula. And from that formula, we can manufacture, and then we'll go down the line till you have a finished good ready. So before there was really nobody to go to, outside of maybe like Eurofins, who was going to charge you, 50 to 100 grand to R&D a product. And that's even if they were willing to touch any type of cannabinoid, so even CBD. So it was really difficult to take these people's ideas like through implementation, but bringing on scientists, we're able to do that now. And it's great. We're seeing some really innovative ideas come from people and introducing them to the market. So I have both of those businesses now. Casco Bay Hemp has grown exponentially, and we're now exporting, which if you had asked me 10 years ago if that was even a thing, I would have been like, wait a minute, what do you mean, like cannabis out of the country? So that's been quite a journey.
What country are you guys exporting to?
So we do bulk manufacturing for UK clients. We've been in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, different parts of Europe, Spain. Right now, Brazil is starting to really take this seriously and kick off their medical program. So I'm actually headed there next week to go to a medicinal cannabis show, first ever in Brazil, and meet with some.
That sounds like a terrible trip.
Yeah, it's going to be awful. I mean, Maine is it's still a little cold here. So I'm really looking forward to at least 70 degrees, and try to kick off my summer early.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure, man. Kid the
yeah,
beach.
yeah, yeah.
Take some days for vacation after.
Yeah, definitely going to stretch that trip a little bit to hit Rio and try to lay on the beach for a minute.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
I mean it makes sense. Like I'll pause you there and just kind of recap. So, that journey that you've explained, it makes sense because of how you pivoted, right? So you had already had the experience working with your dad in the medicinal space, as a caregiver for Mainers. And then once the hemp bill passes in 2018, which makes hemp cultivation federally legal, right, nationwide, um, I can see where the light bulb moment comes on, and you're like, okay, Casco Bay hemp, here we go, right? Um, and it's just great to see how much y'all have grown. And you talked about how you recently brought R&D in. And then you also touched on like how fascinated you were in the 2018 time of learning about the medicinal properties of CBD. So why don't you talk about some of the really eye grabbing, things that you learned about CBD and its medicinal benefits, and then what you've learned now that you brought on R&D on the manufacturing side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first, and I'd say, what's probably still on everybody's mind is THC. You go to a dispensary in pretty much any state, and they're basing everything around that one cannabinoid. And that obviously usually translates to like how high you're going to get, essentially. Um, through through lots of research and just anecdotal stories from patients of mine and patients of other people, in groups that I'm in and working with, you're starting to see more discussion around other cannabinoids, and even to get even more into the weeds on the scientific level, we're seeing that it's not, THC is not the end all be all. It's the entourage effect, which I'm sure you're familiar with and your listeners are probably familiar with. So we're really seeing now is like as terpenes have a huge effect with that, and they're really not studied that much, or at least not in the United States. So market is kind of touching on that right now, but the real ability to create a medicine for somebody that's experienced, if it's somebody with anxiety, for instance, you're really not going to overload them with THC, because THC has a tendency to induce anxiety. So you really want to back off on that. I mean, a little bit's going to help, but it's not the most important part or compound in that medicine. And we're seeing that different terpenes can help, like for instance, with insomnia, if somebody's having trouble sleeping. And again, different cannabinoids like CBN is showing to be really effective at that. If you're looking on the energy side of things, again, THC can, has a tendency to make people tired. So if you're backing off on that and using cannabinoids like CBG and, like limonene, terpenes, more on that kind of citrus end, that tends to give people a little more energy and focus. So a lot of it is anecdotal, but there's just so much of it that it's hard to ignore. I think there's got to be a ton more research, at least in the US. I mean, we need to catch up with the rest of the world. But outside of that, something we've been able to do since we've brought R&D in is look at other botanicals as well, and pharmaceuticals also. So we're working on or have just released a few months ago a muscle rub, and that has high dose CBD in it, but it also has lidocaine and menthol and magnesium. And looking at these products that are on the market and research that's out there, combining them with cannabinoids has proven to be extremely effective as far as a medicinal product goes. And we're just, we're touching on that now and really looking forward to digging into that deeper, as Casco Bay Hemp comes out with innovative products, and, really trying to push the market outside of, its comfort zone with just, CBD or just THC. We want to really utilize that entourage effect and then other botanical medicinals as well.
Yeah. Wow. I've heard this is echoed before on this podcast, and that is the combination of, like you mentioned, the cannabinoids and then other botanicals, right? JBK Wellness was on, they've talked about it. I had Scott Eagle, who kind of had the analogy of, you have cannabinoids, that's one particular instrument in the whole orchestra, right? And so when you add different botanicals, that's where, to your point, I mean, it's a bigger version of the entourage effect, which you would get with, cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids within the cannabis plant. But if you're adding additional botanicals, to your point, it sounds like the efficacy and the benefits are even more, right? I mean, they're increased.
Yeah. I think that, like, with our generation and younger, like, people are getting sick of pharmaceuticals. Okay, this might affect, this one thing that you're trying to, to mask essentially, but, you've got these 12 other side effects. So it's like, really, we're paying attention to like whole body, whole health wellness, and, actually what we're eating and how we're taking care of ourselves. And that just is absolutely in line with, with wellness, whole health wellness products. And exactly, like, cannabinoids are just a portion of that. They're extremely effective, but they can be more effective. It's really interesting, and I feel like it's, kind of cutting edge for where we are and where this industry is at.
Yeah, no, we're definitely just scratching the surface, and it's very, very exciting to see what the future will hold. I want to go back to your point and talk about the hemp industry, more specifically within Maine, right? So I can tell you, here in Texas, there's a lot of flower, a lot of hemp flower that's been grown that's sitting, right? It's hard to kind of sell just because there's so many players involved, and there's not as much enforcement of regulation at the local and federal level, right? So therefore, in Texas, there's a huge appetite for Delta 8. It seems like there was kind of a boom for CBD, and of course there still are consumers, and there's an appetite for CBD and other cannabinoids, but people still want that psychoactive property that THC provides. Are you seeing that in Maine? I mean, what is the product of choice when it comes to hemp products in Maine, and are the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah. So really, I would say, yeah, Delta 8 is definitely, it's kind of staking a claim here in Maine, but it's really coming from outside. Maine's been medical since '99. So, if you want the high, you can get it. We've been recreational since 2016.
Let me ask you real quick on the medical side, before rec in 2016. Did you said rec in 2016, right?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. For medical, what were the conditions that one needed to have? Like, I know in Texas it's really strict, like cancer patients only qualify. Was this more broad, kind of liberal program like we've seen in Colorado and other states before they went adult use?
I think it straddled that. They're definitely, in the beginning, it was a little more difficult to get your certification, but that's because there really weren't any doctors to provide it, maybe one or two. But, I'm not sure what the requirements were back then, but, as of today, or at least, within the past decade, it was made simpler, a little easier to get your certification. You could use telehealth, speak to a nurse on the other end, explain what your problems were, anxiety, back issues, any kind of pain, inflammation. And then, yeah, you would get it relatively easily and quickly for a pretty small consultation fee. And even today through the medical program, that fee's shrunk. I think it's $49 now. And a lot of dispensaries will pay that for you if you make your first purchase there with them. So it's definitely loosened up a lot, but that's probably because of market competition with the adult use. For me, I'm more personally focused on the medicinal aspect of it. My biggest fear is that the medical programs get swept under the rug to make room for the bigger multi-state operator companies that are really just there. They're venture capital backed, or as far as Curaleaf, Russian oligarch backed, and they're after the dollar, right? They've got stakeholders they have to appease, and they're like bottom line. For instance, Canopy Growth, like all but gave up on medicinal and went to full rec because they're looking at to bring in more income. And to me, that scares me, because there's two consumers here. There's definitely the weekend warrior, the person that wants to have a joint around the bonfire. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think it's a right for everybody to have. But then there's, the epileptic patient, there's the stage 4 cancer patient, there's the MS patient. And these people need it as medicine. They need it tailored. They need different compounds manufactured. They need, a gel cap that might have CBG, CBN, THC, CBD, and in different dosages. And they need to have a doctor that manages that for them and helps them determine what their dose is going to be to give them the most efficacy. And if we go all in on recreational, that market, the medical market, might get stamped out. And I think we'd really be losing a lot there. And yeah.
Well, don't you think that at some point, like, the big pharmaceutical companies are going to acquire some of the multi-state operators that are, I guess, more focused on the medicinal side, medicinal uses of cannabis? Because it sounds like what your concern is that the medicinal side is going to be kind of overlooked and overshadowed as more states go online and more of these MSOs come in and stake their footing right in these different states. So is that correct? Is that your concern?
Yeah, I think in the interim, yeah.
So, I mean, do you think that big pharma acquiring companies would, like, I guess, alleviate that concern? And I only say that because, I mean, as we know, big pharma is lobbying against cannabis, but they're also R&Ding, and they're ready with product on the shelf once, federal legalization happens as well. So I don't know. I think that they would take a big interest in it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's really it's interesting to think about all the opportunities or all the potential that could happen with federal legalization. I still, to be honest, wouldn't want Pfizer to be growing my cannabis.
They could have a booster. They could have a cannabis booster, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I might sign up for that, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, cannabis as medicine has like a 5,000-year history through, whatever documented history, and the pharmaceutical companies haven't been around that long. Even in my state, I mean, we've been medical since '99, but I mean, we go way back. Like the farmers up in northern Maine have been growing, for a long time and treating people. And I think we've still got time before federal legalization happens. And I think now is the time that we really need, states' involvement, small business involvement. I mean, this is, coming from an economic standpoint. I think personally, the country is too focused on, big corporations, and then they have power to lobby and change laws, and, totally different conversation for another time. But I think,
To that point, real quick though, I have to pause you because I did a tweet the other day and it was a poll, and I felt so weird like doing it, but it's the reality. So with the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter, and I'm not, aside from how you feel either way, I put in the poll, who would you rather have own big tech firms? And I put billionaires or corporations. And that's really the only option, I mean, there is today, right?
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it's, this country's not set up for small business, and it's really, it's important for states to try to protect that. And I mean, that's really where innovation comes from, competition. And if you kill all the competition, there goes your innovation.
Yep.
And it's really going to just kind of make the whole industry sluggish, which it's already sluggish enough. I mean, we've got enough brick walls in front of us every day. So yeah, I just think we've got this window now between federal legalization, which, whoever wants to guess when that's going to be. But I think we've really got to take advantage of the time that we have now to, build out our communities, build out small. I mean, in Maine, we have over 3,000 caregivers, and that's probably doesn't seem like a lot to larger states like California, but that's super important here because we're such a rural state that you need that kind of like that rural spread to service the towns. And if you've got an MSO come in, they're going to, purchase a dispensary in the city where the highest population is. And if they squeeze out the medical market there, then somebody who's living 6 hours drive away isn't going to be coming down to the city to buy medicine and then go back up. It's just going to kill off the industry. So, and it's been built organically that way as well since '99. We've definitely had some regulation change in the past decade that's made it a lot easier for people to pop up with farms in rural areas. And it's really, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, to have an MSO come and squash that would literally put 3,000 people, like small businesses, out in a really small, in a economically challenged state. And just it would be a disaster for the patients. We've got over 100,000 patients registered, and it would just, I don't know, I guess that's my biggest fear at this point is those economically and medicinally benefits for the entire state.
I mean, it doesn't sound like Maine. I mean, is the state taking any provisions or precautions to kind of prevent that from happening? Are you seeing, or is it something that's just not being addressed at all?
So there's a small group, I'm included in that group actually that lobbies for medical. In 2019, I started an alliance called Maine Growers Alliance, and we're a group of cultivators, high THC cultivators, and we've had to do some pretty serious protection. We had the Office of Marijuana Policy come on in 2018, and so it really the medical market went from 99 to 2018 without too much oversight, or at least not a dedicated department. And they kind of came in and started pushing people around. They hired consultants that worked with a lot of other states that actually effectively shut down 14 medical programs in 14 states. They wrote policy that absolutely favored MSOs, and actually wrote in metric track and seed to sale, track and trace. So one of the consultants was an owner in Metric, and conveniently wrote that in. So that was applied to the adult use program. And it's so overburdensome and so overreaching as far as regulation and cost and compliance, that it's been, you as a local Maine person, you can't afford to start a retail company. So it left it up to MSOs to come in because they had the big backing and start pushing things around and start trying. So what happened then is the department, with the help of these policy consultants, tried to place this entire package onto the medical program. So you're looking at somebody upstate Maine that has, maybe they have like 12 plants and they grow for like 25 neighbors. There's no way they could afford that compliance. So you're effectively like killing that side of the industry. So we were looking at, losing probably 95% of our medical cultivators, which is exactly what they wanted to do, right? Because then they can come in and absorb that market. So my alliance, along with 3 other alliances, got together and started to lobby this out. And since then, this is, I'd say, about a year and a half. Last year, we were able to block that rules package, which was landmark. No other state had been able to do that. So we worked with the committee that oversees the program. We're able to educate them and show them that, yeah, this is not what the stakeholders want. This is not what the patients want. And we were able to show them it was a long battle, a lot of effort.
Did you bring some of the patients in, like, to testify or?
Yeah, the first testimonial public hearing that we had was 9 hours against the rules package. So
wow.
If you keep in mind, people have 2 minutes to give their testimony, and we have 9 hours of it. So it was pretty incredible. And wow. Then, so we were able to get the committee to understand that this was garbage, and they ended up voting to block it. And then we put in another bill that basically, so the department was able to make like rules, but the rules they were trying to do were considered major substantive, which is basically puts a high cost on the stakeholders, on the providers. And so that kind of defines that. So we were able to put the bill through saying that they are no longer allowed to do that. And any kind of rulemaking has to go through committee for an up and down vote in the legislation. So the department can no longer just come up with rules and pass them.
Wow. You know what? So I think there's a learning lesson here, right? So y'all got a lot done, and it was 3 alliances you said that worked together, right?
Yeah, 4 of us. Yeah.
So, and when you mentioned the number, so you said it was 9 hours with 2-minute testimonials. It took all day. So that to me tells me there was tons of patients there testifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so for those like what's the secret, Eben? Like, I mean, there's so many states out there, and there's like, especially in Texas, where there's people that are advocating, they're on the ground, they're doing what it takes. But I mean, like, how were you able to mobilize so many patients and get them to testify and coordinate all that?
Yeah, make a ton of noise. That's really, use social media, use
I mean, were you guys picking people up? Were you taking them to the?
Well, thankfully it was, not so thankfully, it was COVID, but so everything was via
it was
Zoom.
Virtual. Yeah, that's right.
So that was the one good thing about it, is it made it easy for people to just click on and submit testimony. But it wasn't, there's still preparation. You have to sign up to submit and all that. But it really just like a lot of, vocalization, building alliances. I mean, this is so huge. I mean, like Maine has been huge in advocacy for cannabis for a long time. Back, as long as I can remember, as like a teen, there was like main vocals, and they, would lobby for, they're the ones that got medical passed in 99. So it's really just been this great community that just works together and talks together and, advocates together. And it's pretty impressive I don't know any other industry that has this kind of fire behind it. And then of course, having, legislators that don't really know what they're doing, or at a department that has, a little too much power, that definitely fires up the group as well. So like the department tried to pass the second set of rules this past spring, and they got shut down in the same way. And now, and thankfully, the department is working with us very closely, and working with the committee that oversees them. And we've actually, for the first time in the history, we passed 3 bills through collaboration last week. And it's totally changed things. And it's really, I think, given me a lot of hope in the legislation anyway, that we do have a seat at the table. Maybe you should listen to us because this is our industry and we understand how it works. And I understand, like, these legislators they have nothing to do with cannabis. Like, it was a huge learning curve for them to learn all about it, and, and all the intricacies and problems, and, testing, and, just having a hostile takeover from out of state, operators. It's definitely a lot. And of course they have, 100 other things on their plate as well. So it really takes, to go back to your question, it's advocacy, it's, calling your reps, like firing up your friends, organizing, pre-written statements to give to people to read off of, bullet points, and then having groups that can talk to the legislators clearly and not just yell at them, and, really try to help them make their decisions in an educated way, and being at the state house lobbying, and being there till the 11th hour when you're talking to Congress and Senate, and telling them, hey, this is what your constituents want, and we have a big voting power, so you have to listen to us. And but yeah, it's been, and unfortunately you don't see a lot of that in the cannabis world, because it's coming from, it's emerging out of prohibition, and you've got, all walks of life in this industry, and it can be difficult, and
Well,
very difficult.
To that point, I'm like laughing inside because I recently spoke with Elliot Lewis, and it's like polar opposite, man. Like, hearing you, it's like so encouraging. It was a rewarding experience. You got a seat at the table. You guys are working together. They're actually listening to their constituents and the patients. And then, like, for those listening or watching, I mean, Elliot's episode will have already been published, and it's just the opposite. I mean, he's in California, where, there's tons of failures with how the state rolled out their legal rec program. I don't know much about the medical program, but yeah, like they're not working with them at all, and the taxation's so high, and they're not listening to the pain points of the operators and the patients. So and it's just funny to me that California is obviously on the way into the West Coast, and you got Maine first east. So there's learnings here. I think there's learnings.
Yeah, and really that biggest difference is how our legislature is set up. Like, we have a citizens legislature, so we don't have professional politicians. We have
right.
We have loggers, we have, brewery owners, we have, a maple syrup farm. So it's like actual people
awesome.
Doing things. Yeah. So
they got a vested interest. I mean, they're right. They're in the community. Their hands are dirty. They're rolling up their sleeves just like everyone else.
Yeah. Makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eben, as we wrap up, man, I mean, I want to give you the floor. What else is on your mind? Anything that you want to talk about? before we go?
Yeah, actually, I'm working with this group where it's a think tank slash accelerator. It's called Seed to Health, and what we're trying to do, and I'll try to put this in a nutshell because it's definitely a mouthful. This project has been going on for about 7 or 8 years. It's a group of medical doctors, clinical informatics PhDs, microbial PhDs, chemists, analysts, um, uh, all kinds of professionals in the, around the medical and sciences field. And what we're trying to do is create an answer for the FDA's issue, which is clinical research trials, because it's pretty difficult to do a CRT when you've got something as biomechanical as a plant and then something as biomechanical as a human. There's really no constant there. So it's hard to show efficacy. So at least through the CRT. So what we're trying to do is develop a repository for anecdotal evidence, and it's controlled by, creating all these testing guidances, batch guidances, and then and that would be on the input side from the farmer and the manufacturers. And then on the patient side, we're going to create a system, or are creating a system, where doctors and patients can put information into that repository. So think about 5 years down the road when people are using this, and patients and doctors across the board, manufacturers, farmers. And now you've got somebody in stage 4 cancer that is saying, okay, I'm going to try cannabis now. They can go to this repository and say, okay, I'm a male, I'm 60 years old. This is my body type, my weight, this, that, and the other thing. This is the type of cancer I have. And then they can now go through and look at the types of cultivars, or maybe it's a tincture that has, this different titration and dosage, and either rule out inefficacy or show efficacy. So it's not just a shot in the dark, because right now cannabis takes a little time to, get through, basically till you learn what you need, as far as terpenes and cannabinoid profile. So we've got this great group that's been working on it almost a decade now. We're a couple months away from actually doing a release. We're working, I just got back from DC yesterday at a national conference of independent laboratories. So we're working with other labs around the US. We've got full consensus with the labs in Maine. Everybody's working on it. It's really impressive, the amount of people that are volunteering their time to try to solve this problem, for why the FDA is dragging their feet, is because they can't show efficacy or inefficacy. So it's really interesting. We definitely want help as soon as the platform's ready. We want every patient to tell their story and tell it there. And so we can collect all this important information and move cannabis forward as medicine. And the great thing is, cannabis is the catalyst for this, but you're seeing psilocybin come out, you're seeing all these new alternative types of therapies, ketamine, MDMA for treating PTSD and other things. So all of that can be applied through this type of system. I mean, you can even take turmeric and apply it to this once this system is done. So there's really no way to show the efficacy or inefficacy of botanicals right now. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve at Seed to Health. And definitely one of my biggest passions right now.
Yeah, God, that sounds like such a great project. And I mean, data is gold, right? I mean, data's everything. And so the more that you can document the patient experience and the product they're using, the dosage, all of that over time, I mean, that's going to be valuable stuff. I need to get you in touch. I'm going to have a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Cody Guy. I met him at a Delta 9, Delta 8 conference in Dallas. He's a brain cancer survivor, and he's he's doing something similar. I think, I'm not sure the scale of what he's doing, but same thing. Like he said, the FDA, they're dragging their feet. So we're going to take it upon ourselves to showcase the efficacy through data, right? And I love that, man. I mean, that's what it's going to take for this industry, is just people like yourself, and guys like Cody, to actually make it happen and start collecting this data. So you said you're going to launch this soon?
Yeah, we're looking towards an August launch with the website. And then from there, it's going to be just kind of blasting it out everywhere we can, any chance we can get. We're trying to link up with labs in other countries, trying to, link up with as many labs here in the US, and then obviously patients, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations on that, man. That is going to be super valuable for especially the medical patients. I mean, if they've never, if they're a first time consumer, right? Like they don't know what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, hey, before we go, Eben, where can people find y'all's website, social media channels if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so my medical cannabis is called 1780, and that's 1780maine.com, 1780maine.com. Casco Bay Hemp is cascobayhemp.com, and all the ats. Maine Growers Alliance is maingrowersalliance.com, and the ats. Seed to Health is getting ready to be social, and that will be seed2health.com. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. And I'll be sure to include those links in the YouTube description box for everyone who's watching this episode.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course, man. Hey, thank you. Really appreciate your insights, and for you sharing everything that you're working on in the Maine medical cannabis / hemp market. It's exciting, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. And thank you all for listening. Until next time. Bye.